Vulnerability scan in Azure Container Registry, Xbox at the E3 conference, and Visual Basic. These and much more in today's M&AN Show. Hello everyone, and welcome along to a new episode of the M&AN Show, the weekly news about Microsoft and Azure. Before starting with the news, I have an update. If you've seen last week's video, I talked about Azure DevOps disabling TLS 1.0 and 1.1 in favor of TLS 1.2. Well, after receiving some customer feedback, the team decided to postpone the disabling of TLS 1.0 and 1.1. So if you are part of the client base that are still using TLS 1.1 and 1.0, or for example, if you're using Visual Studio 2015, which actually use those protocols, you have more time to upgrade your application and your tools. Without further ado, let's start with the news. The first one is about the Forrester report. Microsoft, in fact, has been named a leader in the Forrester New Wave report, Function as a Service Platforms. This is from Microsoft. We believe Forrester's findings reflect the strong momentum of event-driven application in Azure, crediting Azure Function with robust programming model and integration capabilities, and also confirm Microsoft's commitment to be the best technology partner for you as customers call out the responsiveness of Microsoft's Azure engineering and support as key to their success. If you've never tried Azure Functions, that is the Azure offering for serverless. Of course, they are event-driven and they support a ton of different frameworks and programming languages like C#, PowerShell, Bash, Java, Python, so on and so forth. They grew exponentially in the last couple of years in terms of feature and also in customer adoption. So they are a very solid platform if you want to start your serverless journey. And this report by Forrester really marks the growth of the platform and the growth of the technology itself with Azure as a base. And not only Azure Function is a very powerful solution, but it's also very cheap. You can start for free if you want to take a look at that, but even when you go to the paid tiers, you'll see that for the billing model, which is per second and per consumption, it's really, really cheap compared to some other options out there. Again, kudos to the Function team. Well done. Let's move to the next. As I mentioned in the opening, there is a new vulnerability scanning for Azure Container Registry. In fact, the vulnerability scanning for images in Azure Container Registry is now generally available. This capability is powered by Qualys, a leading provider of information security. When you push an image to the Container Registry, Security Center automatically scans it, then checks for known vulnerabilities in packages or dependencies defined in the file. Now, I've tried this feature, and as you can see from what I read, there's a kind of an overlap between Container Registry and Security Center. In fact, this feature is targeting the Container Registry, Azure Container Registry, but it's a feature of Security Center. So you need to enable it in Security Center. It's fairly cheap. I believe in general it should be about 30 cents per image. And I tried the feature. It takes about 10 minutes to scan an image or something like that. Depends on the size of your image, of course. But it's really powerful. After the scan, it gives you a full report of vulnerabilities, security risks, and some kind of mitigation steps. Now, why is this important? It's important because you want to be sure your containers images are secure and without vulnerabilities. And you can achieve part of that during your, for example, CI, continuous integration, when you can check for your code and for your application. However, when you use a container image, you rely on some layers that someone else created. For example, if you use the ASP.NET container image, you publish your application in the image, but then you rely on the ASP.NET layer, the OS layer, and so on and so forth. So with this tool, you can complement your security and vulnerability scan that you do, hopefully, in your continuous integration, and make sure that end-to-end your image is secure. Again, you can go and enable it for production support. It's present in the security center, and you can enable it per resource, meaning per single container registry, or you can enable it at subscription level to cover all your container registries. Next, let's talk about video games, and specifically about the E3 conference. Now, I'm not sure you've seen the news, but the E3 conference, which is the biggest video game event and conference worldwide, has been canceled. As many other conferences around the world, technical, but not only technical, they had to make a decision based on the current virus situation, so they decided to cancel it. It should have happened, if I'm not wrong, in June, or anyway during the summer, and this year will not happen. They already have plans for next year, but this year has been canceled. However, there's a good news for all the Microsoft and Xbox fans. The Xbox E3 event will still happen, but just online. Instead of hosting a massive stage show at the Microsoft Theater in downtown LA this summer, the Xbox team is moving the conference online. E3 has always been an important moment for Team Xbox. Given this decision, meaning the cancellation of the conference, this year will celebrate the next generation of gaming with the Xbox community and all who love to play via an Xbox digital event. Details and timing and more in the coming weeks. This is a natural consequence of what's happening in the world right now because of the virus outbreak. And we've seen in the past that already some conferences from Microsoft, GitHub, and other players have been canceled or postponed or made virtual. And I think Microsoft did the right thing here, given that the conference is being canceled, but the industry and the players and the fan and the enthusiasts will not stop. So kudos for Microsoft to bring this online. I think it's a big effort to make that happen, but at least we can all enjoy the new Xbox products, the new games, and everything. So be sure to follow these. I will have updates about this in the next main shows as soon as they are available, but we will know more in the next weeks. Next one is security related news, but it's one of the examples on how Microsoft is active not only for its own benefit, but for the benefits of everyone. A botnet is taken down in an operation by Microsoft, not the government. Microsoft organized 35 nations on Tuesday to take down one of the world's largest botnets. The action, 8 years in the making, was aimed at a criminal group called Necrus. Microsoft employees has long tracked the group as it infected 9 million computers around the world. The team struck Tuesday from a Microsoft campus, and as soon as federal court order against Necrus network was unsealed, they began prearranged calls with authorities and network providers around the world to strike Necrus at once, cutting off its connection to computers around the globe. Now, if you don't know, Microsoft has a huge cybersecurity center with locations around the world. And this has been, as the news said, it's been in the making for more than 8 years. And this is a very, very good example of collaboration between enterprises, Microsoft in this case, and local governments, local authorities, and ISPs, etc. But the news here is, of course, that we've been able to take down a 9 million computer botnet, which is, crazy if you think. But for the first time, an operation of this size is being coordinated by a private Microsoft instead of a local government or a government agency. And I think, as I said before, this is a good example of, working for the society, working for all of us. This organization not only was spreading viruses and worms, but was also, active in frauds online, stock frauds, and so on and so forth. If you don't know what a botnet is, you may have understood, but it's a net of computers that are infected with some kind of software, and they act like a huge computer to infect or attack other systems. And in this case, it was 9 million computer botnet. So again, I think it is a very good news. We can sleep a little bit better tonight, I guess. Way to go. And this brings me to the last news for today. This is a news that's, sounds like a little bit of nostalgia because it's about Visual Basic. And I know a lot of people still use Visual Basic, but for me, it's the language I started professionally my career with. So this is why I said it sounds like of nostalgia a little bit. But the news is that Visual Basic support has been planned for .NET 5.0. Before going to the news, let me talk a little bit about .NET 5.0 so we are all on the same page. As you know right now, we have on one side the .NET Full Framework, which I believe is in the version 4.8. And on the other side, we have the .NET Core Framework, which is version 3.1. .NET 5 will be the union of both, will mark basically the end of the frameworks as we know it, and mark a single framework which will have all the good thing from the .NET Full Framework and all the good thing and performances from the .NET Core. And this is called .NET 5.0. Will not be called anymore Core, will not be called anymore Full Framework, just .NET 5.0. And going forward, this will be the naming. So going back to the news, the .NET team says, we've heard your feedback that you want Visual Basic on .NET Core. Earlier version of .NET Core supported only class libraries and console application types. But starting with .NET 5, Visual Basic will support class libraries, console applications, Windows Forms application, WPF, worker services, and ASP.NET Core Web API. This allows Visual Basic customers to take advantage of the new platform features like side-by-side deployment, cross-platform support, performance, and new API improvements. So I think this is a good news for all the Visual Basic developers. However, there's a small side note here. Going forward, we do not plan to evolve Visual Basic as a language. Now, this is not a surprise. I think that it is also mentioned somewhere in the news that Visual Basic adoption is still high because the language is very stable. In fact, I'm not sure when the last update of the language was, but for sure it was not recently. And again, this is the confirmation that Microsoft and the .NET team is fully supporting Visual Basic. There's a lot of new things coming up in the .NET 5.0. However, we will not see new features and new capabilities outside of the framework because all the capabilities and improvements that have been listed here come actually from the framework, not from the language itself. So good news on one side, support for Visual Basic in .NET 5. Kind of sad news on the other side because it's basically saying that Visual Basic, it's there, it's stable, and will not be further developed. All right, this brings this episode of the M&AN Show to its end, and I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the show, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And be sure to turn on the notifications so you will not miss any other episode. See you soon at Coder Dave.